Hello everyone, welcome to my new video. Today I want to talk about hardest and easiest languages in the world. Is it Zhongwen, Nihongo, Polski, or Arabic? The answer is none of them or all of them. In Turkish we would say kime göre, neye göre. Guys, there is no such thing as hardest or easiest languages in the world. I really get annoyed when I see such lists on YouTube or in internet, like ranking the difficulty of the languages, because I think such lists are just making the language learners lose their motivation and then discouraging them when they set a goal for a language. It mostly depends on your native language and how close your native language is to the language you are learning or your language learning background. For example, some people say that Polish is one of the hardest languages in the world because of its cases, but if your native language is one of the Slavic languages, Polish is going to be much easier for you to learn. There are three groups of Slavic languages, like East, West and South Slavic languages. I have experience only with Russian from this group, which is an East Slavic language, so I can't really tell much about the other languages, but I have some friends from Poland or from Slovakia or from Czech Republic, and I can tell that they could communicate with each other without any problem, which means that it's much easier for them to learn Polish. If your native language is English, Afrikaans or Dutch is going to be much easier for you to learn, because they're in the same language family, Germanic language family, Germanic languages. For example, me personally, I can speak German, and for a while I tried to learn a bit Dutch, and it was very easy for me because it's very close to German language, and it's kind of mix of English and German, which made it much easier for me to learn. It was a bit confusing though, but when I check a Swedish or Norwegian text, I can understand many words, many vocabularies, because they're also from North Germanic language family and it's close to German ones. Well, of course, you can also say that these languages are not really hard to learn anyway, but this is just something personal, as I mentioned before. I can keep giving such examples from languages from the same language families. But now I want to give my very personal opinion about this topic depending on the languages I have learned or tried to learn in my life so far. Of course, I'm not fluent in all of them, but I have an image of them at least, about how they work. As some of you know, my native language is Turkish, which is a Central Asian origin Turkic language. My first foreign language is English and then German, which are Germanic languages, and then I learned Dutch for a while. I stopped and then I learned Spanish, which is Latin language, and then Russian, Slavic, but still European language family, and then Chinese and then Korean, which are like East Asian languages. Except my native Turkish, English, German, Spanish and Dutch are not really hard to learn. If I do a ranking among those, I will say German would be the hardest one, and then Dutch, and then Spanish, and then English. Russian, Chinese and Korean are much harder than other ones. I sometimes think that Chinese is the easiest one among them, but there are some points in Chinese which make me think that it's maybe easier than Russian, but there are also some points that you would say, wow, that's crazy. Or I say that Korean is hard to learn, but I can also see that the grammar is similar to Turkish since it's an agglutinative language. So some languages have their own difficult and easy grammar rules or structures, which make it hard to rank their difficulties. So now I will try to give some examples about what I want to say. So let's start with Russian. Russian has падеж, cases. Your noun or object is gonna change depending on your action or depending on the gender of the verb. For example, in English you would say I go to school, I go to Turkey, I go to university, I go to restaurant. The locations remain the same, but in Russian it changes. You say я еду в школу, but the word is школа. Я еду в Турцию, but the word is Turция. You say я еду в ресторан, but the verb is restaurant and it doesn't change. Weird, isn't it? Let's have a look at this charts now. This part of Russian can be very annoying and very challenging, and it requires so much practice. I can imagine that it can be very hard for a Chinese speaker because they don't have any conjugations or such changes in the grammar or in the structure. On the other hand, Russian has only 3 tenses, so you have to conjugate the verb only 3 times. If you compare to Spanish, you know, in Spanish you have to conjugate the verb so many times, there are so many tenses. And other easy thing about Russian is the Russian alphabet, like the Cyrillic alphabet. Every letter has a corresponding Latin letter. If you learn it roughly, you can really practice very easily. But yeah, handwriting is another case, as you can see here. But still, I don't want to scare you. It's a very beautiful and rich language. I will definitely recommend everyone to learn Russian. It can be learned by anyone. Let's take Chinese now. Why do many people think that Chinese is the hardest language in the world? There are some reasons. We all know that Chinese has a very complicated writing system. Like the characters, they don't even have an alphabet. They don't have like ABC. They don't have any corresponding letter, which we would learn easily in Latin. They just have characters for every verb, for every word, or for every object. That's why writing in Chinese looks very complicated and difficult and can be very scary for foreigners. Well, there's a logic behind, but I'm not gonna talk about it now. They say you have to know around 3,000 characters to be able to read a newspaper in Chinese, but I think you need more. And of course the tones in Chinese, there are like 4 tones plus neutral tone. And the meaning of the word can change easily depending on the tone, depending on your tonation. So if you want to say I love my mom, you can sound like you love your horse. Your tonation should be really correct so that the person understands what you exactly mean. That's why I would suggest you to learn Chinese from a native speaker with the help of a native speaker. There are hundreds of examples like this, but I'm not digging into the details now. But on the other hand, Chinese grammar can be very easy. They don't have any conjugations. Let's talk about the example I gave for Russian. When you say I go to school, you say 我去学校, 你去学校, 他去学校. So I go to school, you go to school, he or she goes to school. As you see, we didn't conjugate the verb. Or if you want to say I went to school yesterday or I'm gonna go to school tomorrow, you just say I go to school tomorrow or I go to school yesterday. You just put the time and then the sentence is gonna sound like you did it in the past or in the future. You're gonna do in the future. So no cases, no conjugations. But the longer the sentence becomes, the harder it gets to understand it. My last example is Korean. Korean alphabet is very easy. You can really learn in few hours roughly. Of course, there are some exceptions and nuances, but it's not so important not to be able to understand. These are the only letters that you have to memorize. But Korean grammar can be a bit tricky for someone who speaks only European languages. Because Korean is an agglutinative language such as Turkish and Japanese, which makes it a bit easier for me because of my native Turkish. Recently I have watched a video of a polyglot that I admire a lot because he speaks so many languages and Japanese is one of them. In one of his videos he was giving the example that he still has difficulties about learning the structure of Japanese grammar, because normally in many European languages you would say I want to go to Turkey, but in Japanese you would say I Turkey to go to what? It's the same order in Turkish. Ben Türkiye'ye gitmek istiyorum. Or in Korean you would say 제 이름은 라분입니다. In Turkish you would say benim adım Rabundur. Thanks to my Turkish, it's not that complicated for me to comprehend Korean grammar. So guys, to sum it up, there is no hardest or easiest languages in the world. As I mentioned before, it all depends on your native language learning background, and the languages you have learned so far. If you want to learn a language, doesn't matter which one, just go for it, set a goal and try to learn it. I'm sure you will make it. Take care, see you in my next video.